Hello again, good afternoon, and welcome back to the marketplace. Now to our very first story. Cocoa Board has secured parliamentary approval for the $1.3 billion loan to aid cocoa purchases for the next crop season. But how is the regulator planning to use the funds, and at what cost would it be for the country? George Wiafe has more in this Business Desk report.
According to a report submitted by the Finance Committee to Parliament for approval last night, about 40 banks will be providing the funds for cocoa purchases for next crop season. The interest that will be paid on this facility every month is less than 1%. Now, this is lower than the 1.47% interest paid on the $1.8 billion raised last year. However, some have argued that the differences in the amount raised might have accounted for the decline in interest to be paid. According to the chief executive of Cocoa Board, it had to reduce the amount raised this year because of the declining price of cocoa on the international market. Majority of the funds raised to be used to purchase cocoa beans from farmers. From next month, some contributions will be made into the stabilization fund. Despite securing the approval, Cocoa Board has maintained that it still cannot increase the 427 Ghana cedi enjoyed by farmers for every 65-kilo bag of cocoa beans for next crop season. This is due to the current debt on its books and declining price of the bean on the international market. The country has lost almost $1 billion as a result of declining cocoa prices on the international market. Cocoa Board is hoping to sign the facility with the banks in Paris next month or in Accra. The expected inflows might go a long way to also help stabilize the Ghana cedi from the last quarter of this year.
George Wiafe in that Business Desk report. Now, the Ministry of Trade and Industry says government will leverage science and technology as an integral part of accelerated industrial development. Second Deputy Minister Robert Ahomka-Lindsay urges innovation among academia to complement government's effort to concretize the initiative. He told a stakeholder meeting of academia and industry in Kumasi, government is pursuing policies to increase investment in science and technology.
It is then clear that the complexity of the current economic environment, coupled with the fierce competition we live in today of globalization and liberalization, means that the integration of science and technology in the operation of businesses is imperative. We live in a competitive world where science and technology and innovation are altering so quickly the pace of international trade and economic development that if we're not careful, we will simply be left behind. As advanced knowledge becomes an ever more important ingredient in the development of new products and services, and notice here, I've jumped straight to products and services. Sometimes when we think of technology, we think of our IT specialists. But I hope in the discussion I'm going to have today, we will realize that technology, to me as the layperson, means how to do things in a more efficient manner that leads to greater results. The focus on academia-industry linkages has become more and more crucial. The issue, therefore, of academia linkages becomes critical for the agenda of higher education policy making at both national and institutional level. Madam Chair, academia has become the prime focus and source of ideas, particularly in the developed world, that are increasingly being translated into viable market opportunities. The shape of services provision, product manufacturing, and improvement in systems, processes, and procedures at the corporate world are defined in most of the most competitive economies by the integration of academia and science. The linkages and collaboration and partnership have increased the possibilities ever before to convert knowledge and innovative ideas generated through quality research activities of higher institutions into commercially business viable enterprises. It has been estimated that close to 75% of the patents registered in the United States have their origins in the universities. Clearly, the level of interaction with industries in various forms has become one very important measure of credibility of academic institutions and by de facto the success of their economies.
Meanwhile, in another development, the Ghana Export Promotion Authority is implementing a program dubbed One District, One Export Products, geared towards identifying at least one product in each district with an export potential. Deputy Chief Executive of the authority, Akilu Saibu, says the authority is also hoping the program will help government in its implementation of the One District, One Factory policy. He was speaking at a stakeholders workshop at Bolgatanga in the Upper East region, which is aimed at seeking inputs into the initiative. Correspondent Albert Sori reports.
The One District, One Export Products initiative, according to the Ghana Export Promotion Authority, will help them identify at least one commercially viable product with export potentials in every district across the country. It will also harness the potentials of Ghana's private sector. Akilu Saibu is Deputy Chief Executive of Ghana's Export Promotion Authority.
Now, we are going to set up district management committees to be chaired by the various MMDCs. And, after the identification of the product or potential exportable product, we move to the next phase, and that is the development of the product. And we have other partners who are ready, especially Exim Bank, to support Ghana Export Promotion Authority, to support the various district assemblies to identify the products. So the chief executive officers, district chief executive officers, who will be chairman of the district management committee for these exportable products, will also have supervisory role of whatever it is that will be taking place within the districts.
The workshop at Bolgatanga was aimed at seeking inputs into the initiative from relevant stakeholders in the Upper East region. Deputy Upper East Regional Minister Frank Fuseni Adongo said it will enable the region to contribute to the non-traditional export sector of Ghana's economy.
The MPP government, led by His Excellency the President, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, has the commitment to creating jobs and wealth for our citizens and to promote industrialization through the establishment of factories. This is given in the highest expression through the One District, One Factory flagship policy. I strongly think that our gathering today is the strongest indication of the great initiatives of a government with vision and determination to support the private sector to thrive. Mr. Chairman, MDCs, officers of Ghana Export Promotion Authority and Exim Bank, ladies and gentlemen, the Upper East region has contributed its quota to the non-traditional export sector earnings for Ghana through our popular Bolga baskets, among others.
Speaking to Joy News, some district chief executives were optimistic that the One District, One Export Products initiative by Ghana Export Promotions Authority will help boost the economic fortunes of their district.
Let's now turn our attention to the aviation sector. And the president of the African Development Bank, AFDB, Akinwumi Adesina, says the new Kotoka International Airport Terminal 3 project, expected to be completed in May next year, will boost job creation. The project, which is partly funded by the African Development Bank, aims at easing pressure on the two existing terminals and facilitate passenger handling and movement at the airport. The visiting AFDB president, currently on a working visit to the country, was addressing some members of the press after a tour of the facility at the airport.
The total cost of the Kotoka Terminal 3 expansion project is estimated at $274 million, which includes a $120 million loan from the African Development Bank. This makes it the first private sector investment by the bank in Ghana's transport sector. Addressing the press after a visit to the facility, President of the African Development Bank indicated the project is on schedule.
I'm particularly delighted because this terminal can actually hold, 5 million, passengers per year, which is actually quite significant. When President Akufo-Addo spoke to me, he was talking of Ghana is back, and I think by the time you have an airport facility that can take 5 million passengers a year, that's fantastic. We're very pleased that this will help a lot the economy of Ghana. It will help a lot also in terms of regional integration. And we create a lot of jobs, as you can see, absolutely here. So I'm very delighted to be here, and I want to highly commend all the staff that have been working on this. They're right on time. The quality of the infrastructure is fantastic. And I understand in 270 days this will be ready. So I can only hope to unveil it to you in 270 days to come through here.
The new terminal is expected to handle up to 5 million passengers a year with an expansion potential of up to 6.5 million passengers. Minister for Aviation Cecilia Dapar emphasized her outfit is exploring ways to increase traffic to the facility.
We are doing everything within our power to make sure we have things put in place to make sure we mop up passengers along the West Coast, especially from Nigeria, to use this as an originating traveling place. So I believe, on the West Coast we have at least 350 million people living in a sub-region. And I believe if we even take like 150 million traveling, Ghana's share could be maybe a quarter of that because of our strategic importance in the region.
On his part, Minister for Finance Ken Ofori-Atta was hopeful the development will attract further investment from the bank.
It's been very good for us. I mean, this type of cooperation, as you can see, leads to things like this being manifested. We've talked a lot about aviation, we've talked about agriculture, we've talked about industry and energy. And I think with the type of performance he's seen here, we are sure to get more funding from him.
The airport expansion supports the country's ambition to make Ghana a regional aviation hub.
And in another development, the president of the African Development Bank, AFDB, Akinwumi Adesina, has been sharing some thoughts on the development of the cocoa sector in the country.
The volatility of the cocoa prices has a negative impact on their economies. They also realize that they need to have a greater countervailing power in the market to be able to at least influence the price of the cocoa that enters the global market. But at the same time, make sure that a greater share of the benefits of cocoa that is processed globally stays in Africa and stays in their country. So it's a very, very major development. The African Development Bank, just look at our name. Our name is African Development Bank. So our role as African Development Bank is to support the industrialization of cocoa in Africa, to support the establishment of commodity exchange systems that allows Africa to keep a greater share of the benefits of cocoa in Africa, and also make sure that we address the issue of a fund to allow the countries to stabilize the impact of the external shocks in commodity prices.
All right, so moving into another sector yet, and the PBRO of the LPG Marketing Companies Association, Bernard Owusu Donko, is lamenting the implementation of the cylinder recirculation model policy by the National Petroleum Authority will deprive the members of jobs in the country. He's been sharing his thoughts with Joy News.
We are fighting for our dear lives. I mean, there's this policy that's, if implemented, will put all of us out of business. I mean, all of us. When I say all of us, are the tanker drivers, the LPG marketers, those who operate the LPG dispensing outlets. It will put all of us out of business. So the agitations you see going on, we are fighting for dear life. Because if our businesses are collapsed, we just can't, exist.
Okay. So give me details. What does this policy entail?
Well, you see, for over 30 years now, Ghanaians have been served, Ghanaians who use LPG have been served through the dispensing outlets, what you call the gas filling stations. And the government intended to expand the coverage of LPG users, and ensure that the delivery is done in a safe manner. Well, when we heard it, we thought it was good news because that's the business we do. We serve Ghanaians with LPG gas. And in fact, we have been over the years trying to expand our coverage. So we thought, if that is the idea, that is the object of the policy, then we are in good business because we are going to be the implementers of the policy. Then we come to realize that the policy is not going to be implemented through our operations, but rather there's going to be a separate business where gas bottling plants are set up and cylinders will be taken there to be filled, meaning that users of LPG will no longer patronize our outlets. And that is why we thought, listen, we were of the view that if the object of the policy was to ensure that majority of Ghanaians get to use LPG, we are the best people for the policy to be implemented through us, because we are in operation. We've been serving Ghanaians for over 30 years. But to bring a new business to phase out our business, it is a serious matter. That is why we are fighting for our dear life. That is the reason for the agitations.
Okay, so you think portions of this policy are not fair to you? As much as they are not fair to you, there are aspects of it that may pose risk to the consuming public. What
you see, it is the entire policy where it's not favorable to us. Because one, you are putting us out of business. Two, the policy seeks to do what we are doing. So why don't you help us do it?
So what do you want government to do? Is to support you, give you funding, so that if you don't have that strength to do what government requires in that policy, you will be able to execute. Is
exactly, my sister. My sister, we are in the operation of serving the Ghanaian populace with gas. If the whole idea of government is to expand the business, it should be through us. If the government thinks that probably we need to expand our coverage and it comes to us and we say, oh, these are challenges, maybe funding and other things, we should be giving the needed funding and support from government to do what the government seeks to do.
Meanwhile, in a release, the National Petroleum Authority, NPA, says its attention has been drawn to the purported statement emanating from the Gas Tanker Drivers Association and widely circulated in the media to the effect that 7,000 gas tanker drivers will lose their jobs by September. According to the NPA, contrary to the claim that the cylinder recirculation model policy is set to be implemented beginning September 1, 2017, the policy is in a draft stage yet to be finalized and submitted to Cabinet for approval before implementation. The downstream regulator says the ministerial subcommittee led by the NPA is currently reviewing the policy and at the same time developing a draft implementation plan. It says the NPA has held 2 separate meetings with LPG and oil marketing companies to collate their concerns, and these have been taken care of in the draft policy implementation. The NPA says further consultations will be held with the said companies and other stakeholders, including the gas tanker drivers, before the policy is finalized and implemented. It assures the policy will seek to maintain the existing jobs and will also create more jobs based on the category of licenses to be created in the implementation plan. All right, so we're trying to establish contact with an analyst, of course, to give his perspectives on the particular development. As and when we get through to him, we'll put him across. Now, the managing marketing director of Lakeside Estates, Lawrence D'Souza, is calling for a real estate fund which he believes will make mortgages attractive to Ghanaians by reducing the interest rates on them. Joy News' Maxwell Agbagba has been speaking to some housing stakeholders on how a national real estate fund could help you own a home at a cheaper rate as Ghana's housing deficits keep worsening by the day.
I'm currently here at Nima, basically to find out what the housing situation is like here. Happening behind me right now are some kids who are back from school and enjoying a game of Ampe, but I'm here specifically to meet Emmanuel Johnny. Emmanuel is actually a pensioner. He's a 67-year-old pensioner. He used to work with the Ministry of Defense as a cobbler. Emmanuel is an opinion leader here in this community. He's going to tell us exactly what it was like in the past and what the housing situation is like now here at Nima. A compound of livestock busily feeding, scattered household items, amongst them a television set. Indications the family is in dire need of space as they continue to multiply. Over 15 people live here. Emmanuel Ajani, a pensioner, tells me the housing situation in Nima has worsened over the years and people continue to struggle for places.
It is difficult to get a room here at Nima. You would have to go through an agent before you get a room to rent. You can't do it on your own, so you would need their help. Some people take 3 to 4 years advance payment, and some even charge as much as 650 cedis per month. Some people complain, but they have no choice. In the olden days, it was very easy getting rooms here. But 5 people came here recently in search of accommodation. I told them it is not possible, so they left.
So what options are available for people like the 5 who have had to look elsewhere in the hunt for a place to lay their heads? I have met the marketing director for Lakeside Estates, Lawrence D'Souza, in his office on the 7th floor of the Silver Star Towers. He makes a strong case for mortgages.
You can rent somebody's house for 20 years. The house doesn't become yours. But with mortgage, you pay for 20 years and the house eventually becomes yours. So it is a good idea for our industry.
Why then are people not rushing for options like this? Mr. D'Souza tells me high interest rates and low salary levels are major repelling factors.
It's the interest on mortgage. You see, a lot of the mortgage companies and banks, they charge a minimum of 12 to 13% on the dollar. Then another major thing I realized is that salary levels in the country are generally very low. So by the time they add the interest and they do the assessment, a lot of people tend not to qualify for the mortgage. Either to, if you look at elsewhere, like the US, the Canadas, people pay as low as 3%, 2%.
In his opinion, Ghana needs a real estate fund to make mortgages attractive, as that could help reduce the interest rates for prospective home buyers.
Because speaking to a lot of the mortgage companies, they will tell you that the cost of borrowing, basically they borrow and they also lend on to the potential home buyer. So if the person is borrowing at 6%, the person will add his or her overheads and everything. You realize that there's no way the person is going to borrow to the potential home buyer anything less than 12%. So if we have a real estate fund where these banks could leverage on in order to borrow to homeowners, we can push the interest rates very low.
This is live on the marketplace. Let's now pause here for our investment tip.
Investment Tips is brought to you by Daffing Finance, Deposits, Investments, Borrowings and Advisory.
Investment objective, the returns question. What is the returns expectation? How much income are you expecting? Is it reasonable? What percentages are on offer? How does it compare with the current rate of inflation? How does it compare to the risk-free rates? And how do the returns compare to other similar products of similar tenors?
Investment Tips was brought to you by Daffing Finance, Deposits, Investments, Borrowings and Advisory.
Despite the enormous potential of Ghana's hospitality and tourism industry, it is still bedeviled with several persistent challenges. These include the high cost of utilities, which lead to increased rates of hotels. Sarah Josu explores Ghana's rates as compared to that of similar pedigrees around the world and proceeds to seek the views of some managers of the industry.
According to the 2014 World Travel and Tourism Council report, Ghana's travel and tourism sector directly contributed to 3% of GDP, equivalent to 2.62 billion Ghana cedis. This primarily reflects economic activity generated by industries such as hotels, travel agents, airlines, and other passenger transportation services, as well as activities of restaurants and leisure industries. However, the fortunes of this important industry seem to be dwindling due to the expensive cost of hotel services in Ghana. Some statistics indicate a night stay in a standard room in a high-class hotel is 1,028 Ghana cedis, whereas a standard room for the same class hotel in Dubai will cost an equivalent of 228 Ghana cedis. In Accra, some charges could go as high as 1,648 Ghana cedis per night, while the same offer cost an equivalent of 678 Ghana cedis in Beijing and 1,360 Ghana cedis in Kinshasa. The trend is currently impacting on the operations of hotels. Roman Krabel is the general manager of the Accra City Hotel, and he identifies the high cost of power as the main cause of the problem.
This is about the operation, how you operate a hotel in Ghana. It's very difficult. We can start with electricity bills, and to be honest, it's not only my place, all of my colleagues. I believe the first 2 weeks in every month we are working just for electricity. Of course, solar is a very good future to do, but it's not for free. Everybody has to pay for the solar installation, and it's not cheap. Everybody should work together hand in hand to bring certain costs, operational costs, high costs, down in favor to the operator. If the costs go down, the operators are able also to charge less the guest.
The 2017 second quarter business barometer report revealed that the reduction in the energy sector levy did not affect tariff levels significantly. The high cost of electricity also accounted for 61% of the major challenges facing businesses in the report compiled by the AGI. General Manager of Oak Plaza Hotel, John Madison, in an interview disclosed that if government reviews the tariff structure for industries and hotel facilities, they are likely to drop the prices on their charges.
The cost for electricity in Ghana is quite exorbitant. I think if that's the biggest issue, it's not the supply of it or the availability of it, but I think the cost of actually the electricity to the public as well as industry makes it challenging. We need to look at other sources of energy that is more economical and that makes it more viable. So, I mean, it also creates a lot of strategic thinking and also a lot of creativity on behalf of business operators, industry as such. So, you know, the reality is Rome was not built in one day. And, you know, you need electricity, and sometimes, you know, in a young country in terms of Ghana, in terms of the industrial sector, you know, you're going to have growing pains like this. But I think the focus should be on how to make it more affordable, how to make it more accessible. So I think, you know, as long as government look at these things on a long-term basis and a strategic basis and see how we can make it more affordable and accessible.
Power generators say the issue has been forwarded to the Public Utilities Regulatory Commission for redress. Reporting for Joy Business, Sarah Josu.
And this is where we wrap up on the marketplace for today. Many thanks for watching and, of course, for keeping us company throughout the week. We'll bring you another edition of the marketplace on Monday. Until then, have a great weekend and good afternoon.